I typically like to start with a joke whenever I make some sort of a speech, and I was going to go for the really cheap shot about age, but the problem is Patricia's aging better than I am, and so I can't go there. The other thing that many of you probably know is that this is a very special year, if you will. And that is this is the 50th anniversary of the first printing of Light on Yoga by B.K.S. Iyengar. Huge, half a century, always been in print, 27, maybe 30 languages. But this is also the mark of 40 years since Patricia Walden met B.K.S. Iyengar. And it also is coming up on 40 years that I've known Patricia. We're within a few months of that. And I was going to start by saying, Patricia, I knew you when you were nothing. But the problem with that is she's always been something. I mean, imagine I was a young man, she was young, and that stature, those poses, that dedication that she brought in that first time that I met her in Pune was really quite obvious. And though many times I was trying to slow Iyengar down so I could figure out what he was doing, she was ready to press onward. That, can't we do some more? Isn't there a bit? And then she was something because she came home and picked up the practice and then dedicated herself, drowned herself, and pushed away the world to make sure that she was trying to figure out what was going on and getting her body and her mind and her emotions and all of the sheaths, as we talk about them, to come into a state of alignment. And that kind of dedication eventually turned her into something of a yoga teacher of great merit. The amount of time and dedication that eventually started to move onward to really, really growing this community is beyond belief by most of us who have been witness to it. The amount of time that it takes to put together a convention, she was the co-chair with Victor. The amount of time that it takes to put together an association, at the time it was only a few spots across the United States, Joan being one of them, Patricia being another, and the sprouts of this community growing up. Watching to see what it was like to start and continue in the assessment process, she was something. She was a force to be reckoned with. She was the one who could be called on when somebody needed an extra assist, or somebody had to have words of advice, or someone to trade information with. But the story goes on of this force, this something, this thing, this person, this loved one, this sister, this colleague that we call Patricia Walden. Because many of you know that you could tell these kind of highlighted stories and they still do not give you the sum total of what it's like to be influenced by these kinds of individuals. They're very rare in life, the number of people that you can count who you could see have made a real shift for humanity. And Patricia Walden is certainly one of those people. I have been lucky enough to be associated with her these many years, these 40 years, and to watch that development, not of her, because it was one thing to be able to watch her students come along, that I could recognize, but her own personal kind of dharma that went on, and where it has developed, and the community that has grown, is really quite shocking. Many of you have had the exact same experience that I've had, and you've probably never traded it with someone else. But do you remember what it was like to have Patricia presented to you in very odd, peculiar, unreasonable circumstances? I'll tell you a few of mine. I'm walking down a street in Amsterdam, look in a bookshop window. Oh, Patricia Walden. I'm taking a red-eye flight, and I'm going across the country, and I'm starting to bounce off the walls. I think I'll look up what's inside of the pocket in front of me. Oh, Patricia Walden. Now, why do I say this to you? Because we talk about, and she's very clear with people, that yoga saved her life. Patricia Walden tells people, I was saved by yoga. I was saved by this practice. I was saved by my shift in intelligence that came because of yoga. But the story that we do not tell yet is how yoga was also saved by people like her. That this morphing of dragging, kicking and screaming this most ancient subject into the world, of course, has been credited to B.K.S. Iyengar. But imagine what it was like 40 years ago for an individual woman of young age to travel to India. It was much tougher to tolerate and grab onto yoga as it tried to shake her off and have to suffer the slings and arrows of both B.K.S. Iyengar and Gita Iyengar when she was literally, in some cases, being embarrassed and almost pushed out the door. But she hung on. And Iyengar always considered her to be a very special character. This was his individual word. I was a few times had very individualized instructions. We were talking about, with BKS, and the two of us were talking about the look of this and how this would change and the people we could count on. And his words more than once were, never mind Patricia, she's different, she's special. He had not just great love for you, he had great respect for you. And that does not come easy out of that man. And to have the dedication that you showed ongoing with him and continuing with him was onward. Her ability to kind of morph to the situation. I remember she was in this beautiful dress one night. We had just gotten done with a very large meal. She doesn't eat a lot, I do. We get done, Guruji turns to her and tells her, okay, now do Pashasana. And she wraps herself around her legs, and I'm going, I'm so glad he didn't tell me to do that. She did it, didn't hesitate, moved on. But let's do this again. Iyengar gets this credit for bringing yoga to the Western world. He deserves it. None of us is going to question that. But what was it like to be one of the stalwarts, and what was it like to be a female and a yoga teacher and a yoga instructor and an inspiration? I've always said it's easier to be a beginning level male yoga teacher. It is much more difficult as a female. But I believe that that shifts over at some time when you have a certain amount of seniority, when you get a little bit of respect, and that people start to recognize. My hopes for the future are that people will recognize this most unique of individuals and start to, not to dedicate their lives to be like her, but to dedicate their lives to trying to understand their lives like she did, and to take the kind of time and energy that is required to allow for the transformation of the universe, as I suggest to you, Patricia has caused for so many. Patricia, I love you. Happy, happy, happy birthday. Have as many of them as you choose.